Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. Today we're taking a look at a new case from Deepcool. It's the Matrexx 50 Mesh 4FS. The 4FS means it comes with 4 fans, however, they're non-configurable RGB fans. The draw card of this case though, from the get-go, is it appears to be relatively cheap. So let's take a look at it. Let's see what makes this thing tick. We're gonna take a look at thermals, we're gonna pull it all apart and see if this is worth your hard-earned money. Let's jump right in. All right, let's kick this off with doing panel removal. This actually doesn't have plastic on the glass. Hello, Claire, do you want to wave at everyone? You're in the background, I kind of did that on purpose. No, you're in the background. Hello, Claire. She's like hiding, but you can't actually see her in the reflection. It's got 4 of these thumb nuts. I call them thumb nuts because it triggers people, but yeah, they are actually technically screws. But yeah, there's 4 of them. They live in each corner. It's got no plastic wrap on the case, so no peel corp, and even if it did, I wouldn't have done it anyway because I'm mean like that these days. Okay, the glass is kind of tinted. I know people like to know, so yeah, it's kind of tinted. Here you go, Claire. Just place it on that table for me, my love. Put these thumb nuts back in their nut holes. The TG panel is mounted with these 4 anchor points and it's got holes drilled in the TG panel. The old original Mesh 5 was kind of like this too. Thumb screws holding in the rear panel. Always have thumb screws in the rear. That mesh comes off by itself anyway, so we'll just pull the mesh off. So the mesh is completely separate. You don't need to rip off the front panel like I just did because I didn't know. I'm so used to ripping them off, but yeah, it turns out after a little bit of mucking about that you can just pull that panel off whenever you like. For hard drive and SSD mounting, you've got 2 sleds on the back side for SSDs. You can also do 2 more 2.5-inch SSDs or 2 spinning rust drives with these sleds that live down the bottom of the case. Pretty standard hard drive sleddy goodness, and yep, standard stuff. There's also some screws on the bottom of the hard drive cage that anchor it to the case, and they can be removed, and you can maneuver this out of the case if you like as well, much like some of the other Deepcool cases that we've covered. So this can be removed if you want to use a larger power supply. Speaking of power supplies, while we're down here, it supports up to 170mm power supply, a regular ATX power supply. Anything above 170, I would attempt to remove these, but if you're building in a case like this, chances are you don't need anything much bigger than that. For front panel connectivity, you've got your USB 3.0, USB 2.0, front panel audio, and all your lights and all your switches to let you know everything is up and running and working on your PC. Front panel I/O, you've got, well, rather top panel I/O, power button, USB 3.0 port, 2 USB 2.0 ports, a headphone and a microphone jack, and a reset button. For cable management, there's plenty of little tie down points all over the back side of the motherboard tray. I would say that it's probably adequate enough, especially like for the type of system you'd be doing on here. So you've got tie down points all around. You can see them there everywhere. As well as that, you've got about 24mm of clearance between the side panel and the back of the motherboard tray. So that's actually not too bad for a case like this. Anything less, then you'd be in a bit of trouble, but 24mm is adequate. A few little things I've noticed as well with this case is there's no rubber grommets, which for a cheap case like this, that's not too surprising that there isn't any rubber grommets here. So there's none on the motherboard tray itself or down on the PSU shroud. I think that's fine. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, it doesn't come with rubber grommets. However, it would have only cost a couple extra bucks to throw these in. So like there are some other budget Deepcool cases that have grommets. So I think with this motherboard tray in particular, it would have been nice considering there's so many holes. And if you were to be doing nice cable management behind these holes, there's no real way to route around these holes unless you go straight down. So that one is a little bit disappointing for me, to be honest, but at the end of the day, not a deal breaker. When this case only costs around 89 Australian dollars, not US dollars, Australian dollars, which means this probably puts this case around the 50 to 60 US dollar mark with 4 included fans. So not too bad from what I can see so far. Motherboard support, you can go from ITX up to eATX. There's nothing impeding anything from putting much bigger motherboards in this case. That is completely up to you if you wanted to go eATX, but considering this is a budget case and eATX boards are usually more expensive, it might not be like what you want to do, but at the end of the day, eATX is a fake specification, and the fact that it can support that is, you know, it's interesting enough. They should have done a similar motherboard tray to this on the CL500, so you don't need to cut out your own eATX bits for it, especially with pass-through holes up this end too. This looks like you'd probably be able to do like CEB or even EEB. Given there's actually holes for standoffs that are much further along, which would suggest to me that you could actually go way bigger than eATX. There's 3 included fans. Now I'm just calling them fans because that's exactly what they are. They do have RGB. You cannot set the RGB on these fans. They're basically just unicorn spew. There's 4 in total. They're the Deepcool RF120 FS's, just a static RGB fan with unicorn spew. There's obviously 3 at the front. There's 1 at the back as well. But the thing that I find most interesting about these fans, and by interesting, I mean, why on earth would they do this? They use MOLEX connectors. Why are we still using MOLEX for things? Stop this. Some people like it. I can't stand MOLEX. We don't want this. The most confusing thing to me is they could have just as easily used DC fans or PWM fans that plug straight into your motherboard. I hate these connectors. I was done with these in the early 2000s when we moved from IDE to SATA drives, and then we stopped using these MOLEX connectors for our hard drives. We don't need to have these anymore. It's way past its use by date and legacy. Just get rid of MOLEX, please. For the love of all good things in the world, get rid of these connectors. They suck. All right, enough ranty about MOLEX. On the front, you can do a 360mm rad, you can do a 240mm rad at the top, or a 120 rad at the back. I'm not sure why you'd want to use a 120mm rad in 2021, but that's the same deal there with fans as well. You can do 140mm fans in the front too. You can do 2 of those in total. You can also do 2 140s in the top. There's quite a bit of clearance up here as well for RAM clearance. So even if you were to do like a 240mm AIO, you'd have significant RAM clearance. I don't think you're gonna have many issues with that. Deepcool's usually pretty good with RAM clearance and top mounted AIOs. Just to reiterate a little bit, 3 120s up the front. On the top, you can do 2 140s, and on the rear, obviously just a 120mm fan. CPU cooler height on this case is a bit all over the place with the specs. So Deepcool says 160mm on one thing and then 165mm on another. Here's a cooler that's 164mm, and clearance-wise, this cooler fits in no problem. So 165 is probably more on the end of where CPU cooler support is. And yeah, this is a really awkward angle to film on. Let's get that out of there. For dust filtration, you've got a magnetic fan filter that goes on the top of the case. It just sticks, and there's one on the power supply as well that I'm not gonna get off because they're annoying to put back in. Maximum GPU length, you're looking at about 370mm. Here's the Tough Gaming 6700 XT. Just as a bit of a reference, this card is 332 or 35mm, or maybe it's 23, 25, I can't remember, but you can use this as a bit of a reference if you're interested in knowing the maximum length here for GPUs. Got a bunch of standard included accessories here. All the regular stuff, screws, zip ties, all that jazz, all the normal stuff. A manual in case you need it, which you won't if you're watching this video because we're gonna go through everything. That's as much as you need to know about this new Deepcool case for now. We're gonna do a build with it. We're gonna test the thermals and then let you know if it's any good. Alright ladies and gents, hope you enjoyed the build in the Deepcool Matrexx 50 Mesh 4FS. Let's take a look at those thermals. What you're seeing on screen right now is the thermals are actually pretty good for this type of configuration. Be aware though, these parts don't really get that hot, and this CPU cooler in particular is just way too much for this CPU, to be honest. This cooler is up to 220 watt TDP. This is a 65 watt part. The other thing is this GPU, out of all the 6700 XTs, is one of the best thermally performing ones in general. And because these fans have a static speed of 1 million RPM, they're quite loud. And this thing is pushing serious air through it, like, right, you can probably hear it, right? These fans blow very, very hard, and they're very, very noisy. Whiny, in fact.
Reminds me of someone.
The reason why you're seeing the thermals the way they are with these fans is because you guys always say that when we review cases and we change fans out and we don't use the stock included fan, you want to know how it performs with the stock fans. And because this has got 4 RGB fans, I didn't find a reason to go ahead and change these fans, given that, again, they're quite loud. I also didn't feel like adding extra fans to that as well, because if I did, it would have been almost impossible to match the colors for the B-rolls and the Claire's part of the job and all that stuff.
What?
I'm so tired, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just exhausted. It's been a big day and a big couple days. Anyway, right. What else do I want to talk about? That's it. Thanks for watching. See you later.
I need to call HR.
Yeah, I'm tired. We've concluded that the thermals are good, but the fans are a little bit loud. You can probably hear them through my microphone right now. Nothing I can do about it. We just have to deal with it. Anyways, guys, let's talk about those parts. The CPU is the AMD Ryzen 5 5600X. We put the 5600X on the Asus Tough Gaming B550 Plus. Yes, I had to update the BIOS to make this CPU work with BIOS flashback because it does not work out of the box. Yeah, that's how we talk to the cats. I'm speaking native meow. So we use the Deepcool AS500. You guys are probably noticing a few Deepcool parts here. That's quite literally what I had available today, and yeah, I didn't want to use that ID cooling cooler because I used it last week and I was like, hey, you know what? Haven't used this Deepcool one for a while. Just so happens we're reviewing a Deepcool case, so it kind of made sense to tie it all together in one doobler hibbler dibbler doo. The GPU is the Asus Tough Gaming 6700 XT. You probably noticed there's a support bracket underneath the GPU. It's the new Deepcool one. They sent it along with this case, and again, I figured, you know what? If you send us a case for review and some other little doohickey, I'm just gonna jam it in there, shove it up there so it holds all the heavy things up. I'm trying to get through this with laughter because I'm actually crying inside.
It's very hard.
It's very hard and heavy. The RAM is 16 gigs of V-Color RAM. I forgot the name of it now. I feel really bad because it says Gear Seekers on it. Let's just say it's V-Color Gear Seekers Edition at 4133. It's got 2 dummy modules, 2 regular DIMMs, and Bob's your uncle. I said it. I said the thing. I haven't said the thing in a while, Claire. Bob's your uncle. That's going on a t-shirt. Write that one down, Claire. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Right now. Do it right at this point in time. Right now. Don't work on the thumbnail. Do that. Bob's your uncle. And if I missed any other parts, I'll put a PC part pick list down below. All right, let's talk about this new case from Deepcool. As far as cable management is pretty good, but again, as usual, keep in mind that I didn't really do an overly complicated build here. There's no SSDs or anything like that. It's just a single M.2. There's no additional cables that I needed to run for anything like fan cables or whatnot, which is kind of the bonus of using this case as it is. And that's why I didn't change the fans in this case. As much as I ranted about MOLEX in that part of the video with these RF120 FSs, it made it kind of easy to connect up, but again, it's getting 12 volts of power and the things are super loud. They're really, really loud. They should have quite literally just given us PWM fans, because that way it gets all 12 volts, and then we can control the speed and the lighting will not be affected. Like the lighting effect on these fans, I don't mind them. It actually looks pretty good. I think it's actually a nice color scheme. In fact, I'll be stealing this color scheme when I do custom lighting in other builds because I think it looks pretty sweet. What do you reckon, Claire?
I like it on the front.
Yeah, if I put an RGB controller in here, I would have done the cooler and everything else like that, but you know, or a sync. I just made it easy for myself. The thing is with cheaper cases like this, the build quality is usually pretty, the metal on this case is quite thin. I don't like the fact that they have these, like the covers for the PCIe slots that you need to bend and snap out. It's not the year 2000. We don't need to do this. I get that it's cheap for tooling and building these things en masse on a production line, but give us slot covers. So yeah, get rid of that. Get rid of all of them. I hate these things. They're annoying. Other than those few little annoyances with this case and the build quality, I think that, you know, you're kind of getting what you pay for. You're getting a case with included fans, given like you can't control the speed or the lighting on them. That's okay, they look pretty cool as it is. And you know, you can't really ask that much for the asking price. So as far as Australian pricing, I have confirmation that it's 89 Australian dollars at M-Wave. I'll put a link in the description if you guys are interested as well. But if I do a currency conversion, I'm gonna say that if this becomes available in the US at some point, which it may or may not, it's really hard to say, it's gonna go from anywhere from, let's say in the scope of 55 to 65 US dollars. So if you take into account what this case has and that estimated price, it's not bad value, especially if you're trying to build a computer with a bit of aesthetics and you don't want to have to mess around with it, you know? So you getteth with one hand and Deepcool taketh away with the other, and they taketh away with the price. For me, when we look at cases like this, we have to really take into account that budget focus for these cases. And a lot of people forget that. They're like, oh, this case that you're looking at is utter garbage and the build quality is rubbish. But you just need to look at where they're pricing it in the market. This is a very cheap case. There's gonna be someone that buys this case because they absolutely love it. I don't love it. And that's the bottom line. Anyways, guys, if you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. It's available over on Patreon. You wanna get early access to some of our videos, they're available over on Floatplane. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek. Yeah, you know, the thing is, people sometimes say, oh, you're such a shill and blah, blah, but it's hard to deny when something is that cheap and you get so much included with it, you know? You gotta be reasonable with these things, and that's me, I'm reasonable. I think about it from every perspective. Sure, we could review every expensive case under the sun, but that's just not being honest with you guys. If there's something cheap that comes through and I think it's worth looking at, I'm gonna look at. Even if I don't think it's worth looking at, I'm gonna look at it because I want you guys to make the right decisions. And this one is not bad value. Thanks for watching.